Welcome. My name is Bekah Saidman-Krauss, and I serve as the Associate Dean for Admissions and Financial Aid at Penn State Dickinson Law. I'm pleased to host Dickinson Law's monthly webinar series, From Pre-Law to Practice Greatness. This series is designed to cover various aspects of the law school application and selection process. Whether you're a pre-law advisor, a prospective student, or even an incoming 1L, we hope this series proves to be insightful and informative. We invite you to visit dickinsonlaw.psu.edu/webinars to watch previous episodes in our From Pre-Law to Practice Greatness series. I'm pleased to be joined today by two members of the Dickinson Law community, my colleagues, Professor Mohamed Badissy and Trezlen Drake. Over the next hour, these two professors will answer your questions about the law school experience in general and Dickinson Law in particular. Before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our guests. Professor Mohamed Badissy is a scholar, advisor, and international development advocate in the field of energy and climate finance. His research focuses on the use of contract standardization and sustainable finance to accelerate the development of energy infrastructure in emerging markets to increase access to affordable and abundant energy. Professor Badissy previously served as the senior attorney for energy and finance with the Commercial Law Development Program of the U.S. Department of Commerce, where he advised governments in emerging markets on commercial law reforms intended to catalyze private investment to increase energy access and decarbonize power markets. Over the past decade, Professor Badissy has led energy sector reforms in dozens of markets in partnership with host governments, multilateral institutions, civil society organizations, and industry leaders. He continues to serve as an advisor to both public institutions and private developers. Professor Badissy's scholarship has primarily focused on the development of open source legal guidebooks for use by low resource governments. This includes 3 books for which he is the principal editor and as a contributor to a handbook on the management of sovereign debt published by the African Development Bank. Professor Trezlen Drake serves as an instruction and outreach librarian at the H. Laddie Montag Jr. Law Library at Dickinson Law. In addition to teaching legal research too, Professor Drake engages with the Dickinson Law community to find ways the law library can support both instruction and scholarly needs. After completing her master's in library and information science with a special certificate in law librarianship at the University of Washington I School, Professor Drake spent 7 years working as a foreign, comparative, and international law librarian in academic settings. She has taught first year, upper level, and LLM students, served as a guest lecturer, provided reference and research support, created research guides, and worked with library colleagues and committees to expand the library's collections. In addition to her Juris Doctor and Master in Library and Information Science degrees, Professor Drake also holds a Master in Fine Arts degree in creative writing with a graduate certificate in Women's and Gender Studies from the University of South Carolina. Some of you have submitted questions in advance of our session today via email, so we'll start there, but feel free to use the Q&A feature in Zoom to ask additional questions throughout our presentation. We'll make every effort to respond to all inquiries, but if for some reason your question is not addressed today, please email us at dickinsonlaw@psu.edu. Let's get started. So, our first question. If I know that I don't want to practice law in the traditional sense, should I still go to law school?
I can jump in with that. I'm going to start with a yes. You should still go to law school because there are lots of things that a law degree can do for you. For myself, I found that a law degree kind of opened up the world and a different understanding of how our government functions, and looking at and a better understanding of things that are going on around the world. I did practice law after I graduated from law school, sat for the Georgia bar, and then practiced in the areas of immigration. I worked as a public defender and a lot of other areas to try to get a sense for, is this really the thing for me? And then I went to library school because I found that that was a better fit for me. But there are lots of other things that you can do with a law degree that doesn't require you to become a librarian. There are lots of ways that you can use that law degree. There are lots of writers who are lawyers. There are teachers who are lawyers, well, law professors like Professor Badissy and I have our law degrees. So there are plenty of things that you can do with a law degree if law school is for you. A corollary to that is, like, if you're not really interested in law school, this could be, a rough road, because the first year of law school can be pretty tough. Even if you're at the top of your class, very smart, you get to law school and everybody's very smart. And so, that's something to think about, because it's a lot of work. And if you're not fully funded, those are a lot of loans to take out to go to law school if you're not sure that you want to practice. And I'm not trying to discourage you from that. I'm just kind of being realistic about student loans and what law school is actually like.
Yeah, it's a big investment in terms of time and money. And I think that is important to recognize. But I also think that, a law degree is really, a lawyer is really a problem solver. And so the degree is versatile, even if you don't want to practice in a traditional sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't regret my law degree.
And that's a fun thing you get to decide after the fact too. So let's think about it. It's like you figure out over time. I'll just quickly say that I agree with everything that Professor Drake said, and I'll add that the law degree, the modern law degree that we have today, is the closest thing you have to a practical philosophy degree. It's the closest thing we have to like spending a couple of years learning how to think, how to be an effective communicator, how to be an effective writer. Like, don't go to medical school if you don't want to be a doctor. That's a giant waste of time, right? Don't go to accounting school if you don't want to use a calculator all the time, right? Law school allows you to do a couple of different things. Now, I think you want to be clear, and I think Professor Drake's right. A majority of folks who go to law school become lawyers. So if you definitely don't want to be a lawyer, you definitely shouldn't go to law school. But if you're not sure, if you're wishy-washy, then it's actually, I think, a fairly safe bet compared to other options. End of the day. And I'll tell you, I was a public school teacher before law school. I wasn't entirely set on being a lawyer. I just knew that I wanted to have some more like skills. I wanted to be more effective as an advocate. And it was only in law school that I fell in love with being a lawyer. I had no intention of being one going to law school. I plan on going back into school administration, but that pathway, you get to sort of do a little bit more winding in law school than most graduate schools.
So now we have a question from a pre-law advisor. I'm often asked by my students whether they should take a year or two off before attending law school to gain real-world experience or save money. What are your thoughts? Let's start with Professor Badissy, because he mentioned that he in fact maybe took even more than a few years off, maybe had a previous career.
Yeah, and actually, let me be very blunt about that. I'm going to differentiate between the kinds of experience. I think it's always a good idea to have a little bit of a gap, but it can be for two different reasons. One is, if there's something you want to do professionally, you got an engineering degree in undergrad, you want to go build some stuff. You got an economics degree, you want to go out and do some research. You got a politics degree, you want to go organize, work on a campaign. Then yes, taking time to fulfill that passion is good for your experience, but also gives you a skill set that actually translates into real marketability in law school. I mean, a lot of lawyers practice in areas they had previous experience in, professional experience. But there's a second reason to take a gap, and that's for personal growth. I think Professor Drake said it, and I want to emphasize it. Law school is hard. It's challenging. You're in a room full of talented people, which is great because you rise, they sort of inspire you to be even greater than you were before, but it challenges a lot of like your assumptions about your own self-worth, your assumptions about your study skills. And if you need a little bit of time between undergrad and grad school to sort of settle, mature a little bit, I'm going to use that word because I needed that time, I'll be honest with you. That's something that is a perfectly legitimate reason to take some time off, not just because you had a great career opportunity, but because you needed time to sort of learn how to wake up, go to a job, get things done, and meet deadlines, which is not necessarily something you know right out of undergrad. And so there's two reasons I'd say to take that gap: professional opportunities or personal growth opportunities. I think both are legitimate reasons.
So this is a question from an incoming student. Actually, this is a combination of questions. We received a few questions kind of about this, and so I've compiled them. I understand that the 1L curriculum is fairly standard across US law schools. What classes should we expect during our first year at Dickinson Law? And then the sort of related question, when we are permitted to choose our own courses after 1L year, how do we go about selecting them? There are so many options.
I'm happy to take a first crack at that. So first of all, yes, the 1-year curriculum is pretty much standardized, and that's not by the choice of the law school, that's by the American Bar Association, and they sort of want to make sure that every first-year student has a pretty uniform experience. I will tell you, while the classes are standard, you're going to take torts and contracts and criminal law and common law, the way they're taught can vary tremendously across schools. I mean, we explicitly, at Dickinson Law, we're a small school by design. We're a teacher-led faculty by design, and we have a lot of sort of practical experience. And so we teach our classes in a very practical way. Some schools are highly theoretical. Everything is sort of, the the reasoning behind something and the meta logic. And so the same curriculum can be taught in many different ways. That's one point I think it's important to note. And you sort of, again, want to know your learning style. You want to know your learning modes and find a school that matches that learning mode. That's a very important thing, despite the fact that all the first-year classes are the same. I will say on the second question about how to choose classes, one of the smartest things you can do in your first year of law school is to formulate an opinion. It's almost like how you argue the law. Come up with an idea of what you think your future lawyer life looks like, and then challenge it, right? You went into law school thinking to be a TV lawyer, criminal, prosecutor, going to be there, picking a jury. Get out there, see some trials, sit in on some cases. Maybe that summer do an internship at a DA's office and ask yourself, do I actually like this? And if your intention is confirmed, take those classes, drill deep. I'm going to take all the, criminal law, prosecutorial, advocacy classes. I'm going to come out 100% ready to go. But if you're still not sure after that first year, the great thing about law school is you can be curious. And there's apart from a few select requirements, you have a lot of, when I was in law school, I ended up being a corporate lawyer doing corporate finance. I didn't take a single business class in law school. I took animal law, family law, gender identity law, and law of the sea, because I was curious. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I think if you've picked a path and you're certain about it, go ahead and drill deep on that path and come out as skilled as possible. But if you're curious, and again, sort of going to law school because of that curiosity, make sure you allow yourself to be curious in how you choose your classes.
So I'll follow up on what Professor Badissy said. Other classes that you can see that you'll be taking in the first year curriculum would be legal writing and legal research in some form. And while the doctrinal classes are important, what I will say is in your first year, make sure to pay attention to the legal research and the legal writing, because if you are somebody like Professor Badissy who ends up practicing in an area where you didn't take those classes, that legal research and legal writing, those skills will help you as you transition into a different area of law. And the way that I approached my second and third years of law school was I knew I was interested in human rights, and so I took human rights classes and I took crim law classes. But I also took some risks too. I took con law 1 and 2, not my best classes, but it was information that I felt that I needed to really be able to think about a lot of things that are happening in this country, a lot of constitutional questions that pop up on a regular basis, especially when you're looking at cases that are going to the Supreme Court or you're looking at what the Congress does. Do I have the best understanding of all of that? No, but I understand the language, and because I'm a researcher, I can go and do some digging and find that information for myself. So, a couple of approaches.
So as a shy person and an introvert, just to clarify, I'm relaying this question from someone else because I am not a shy person, nor am I an introvert. So the question is, as a shy person and an introvert, I'm super intimidated by cold calling. What advice can you offer to help me get through my first week, let alone my first semester? Let's start with Professor Drake on this one.
Okay, I was like, I'm gonna jump in on this one. So I'm an introvert, not always shy, sometimes shy, raised to be sociable, but I'd rather be reading. So that's how I will describe myself. But the things that I do, like when I went to law, when I practice law and when I teach, I think of that as my job. So I would say starting law school, your first week of law school, think of this as your job, and you're getting paid to be prepared to speak. Nobody likes cold calling. Well, there might be one or two people in your class who like cold calling. The rest of us do not enjoy cold calling. And the best way to prepare for that would be to stay on top of your reading, take notes, figure out how to outline, figure out how to brief a case, and bring those notes with you, because when you get cold called, if you get cold called, you're usually allowed to look at your notes. And so, if you are somebody who, like me, sometimes, I have everything memorized and ready to go. And when it's time to speak, my mind goes blank. Those notes are going to be super helpful for you. And then the other thing that I would say is, even though it feels like everybody's looking at you and judging you, just keep in mind that this happens to everybody, and most people don't like it. And it's, in a sense, it's an initiation to law school and the practice of law, and it may not feel good, but you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you get ready to go again for the next time. So that's what I have to.
I would just add too that I think it's important to recognize that people have a lot of fear about public speaking and being cold called coming into law school. But the best position, in my opinion, to be in coming to law school is somebody who is a great reader, a great studier, is great with their nose to a book, and needs to learn how to speak. Because that's a much easier skill set to learn than the other way around, where you come in with great, oral advocacy skills, and you got to learn how to outline a case and how to read 400 pages in a week and whatever it's going to be. And so see yourself as actually having an advantage. If you're coming in with that concern about your public speaking skill, you've got 3 years to grow into that skill. And the school curriculum, as Professor Drake described, is designed to sort of pull you into that space and make you comfortable, to really give you a voice. That's part of what we do. We talk about building your voice. So I would not see that as a liability. I would see that as an opportunity. And then, I mean, you'll hear this a lot, and I think Professor Drake said it's a shared pain. It's part of what brings you together as a community. You all have to do it, and everybody goes through it. And frankly, nobody's good at it. Let me just tell you right now, people think they're good at it. Nobody's good at it in their first year. And so I think you should really see that as I think initiation is the right word. Like how Professor Drake put that it's a growth opportunity. If you came in with that with day one, fantastic. I would be suspicious. If you're honest day one that you're worried about your speaking skills, you're in the right place to start that journey. And I think Lubomir was saying that there's a question in the chat about, advice for LLM students. Let me just note that one of the best things about an LLM, especially if you're, a foreign trained lawyer, is part of what you want to do in your time in the US is, again, get out of your comfort zone. Learn how to be comfortable speaking in legal English, not just regular English, writing, in legal English. A lot of what law school is designed to do is to put you in difficult positions and make you comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you don't know what questions are going to pop up in the courtroom. You don't know what random, filing the opposite, opposing counsel is going to put up. You don't know what crazy demands going to come up in a negotiation. Being comfortable with the idea of discomfort is a huge part of the legal skill set. And you want to seek that out, not avoid it at the end of the day.
So this student says, I've read about and applaud the various steps that Dean Conway and the Dickinson Law faculty and administration have taken to become an anti-racist law school and a safe place for members of the LGBTQIA+ community. What is the surrounding area like for queer and trans folks as well as people of color?
I mean, I'm happy to take a crack at that. I'll take it just because I've lived here longer than Professor Drake has. So I think I can maybe have a more credible
Yeah,
opinion.
Professor Drake just moved here. She's like in the area.
And I moved here from DC, a place that I consider to be, fairly progressive in that regard. I will tell you, one of the truest things about Pennsylvania is that it's the way it's described is often true. This is a truly purple state, culturally, politically, economically. We have everything from industrial to agricultural to big city finance, whatever you want to call about it. It's a very diverse place in all parts of the spectrum. As a result, I think a lot of people learn to appreciate diversity, and we have a pretty welcoming community here in Carlisle. We had the advantage of having 3 different schools: the Army War College, Dickinson College, and Dickinson Law School. We have a lot of we call commuter families, folks who work maybe in Harrisburg or even Philadelphia, folks who actually commute all the way to Baltimore. And so I think we have a pretty welcoming community, but I want to acknowledge the fact that there are more traditional, perhaps some would describe less accepting communities in the area. And so the way to think about that is that you are moving to a place that has real cultural, religious, and other diversity. Acknowledge that, be aware of it. It's not a reason for fear or for concern. It's a reason to understand that you will absolutely have a comfortable and welcoming place in our community, I think, regardless of your background. But acknowledge that our community is part of sort of a microcosm, is part of a larger one, and then part of a sort of a grander scale. And there are different people who think a lot of different things in Pennsylvania. I personally will tell you, it's one of the reasons my family moved here. We specifically moved to Carlisle to get out of the DC bubble. We acknowledge the fact that sort of there is a diversity that is necessary for you to be successful as a professional, to grow as an individual. And think about that in your law school experience. If you come from a big city and you're gonna go back to a big city, you come from an urban area, you're gonna go back to an urban area, this may be your opportunity to get out of your comfort zone culturally as well, to get out and actually understand other parts of the fabric of this country that make up the community that ultimately the legal system is meant to serve. So I think it's important to acknowledge that we are welcoming, but there may be some boundaries you should be aware of, and sort of that you have to be cautious sometimes stepping into those other communities.
Great. So someone says 5 days until Dickinson Law's second deposit deadline, and I'm still torn between 2 schools. How do I choose? And I would say you're in the right place, doing the research, learning. Ultimately, we want students who feel like we're a good fit for them. And so, hopefully this is not the first. Hopefully this is not my cameras are fine, Molly Edwards. Yeah, so hopefully this is not the first time you're engaging with Dickinson Law. Reach out to the other school or schools that you're considering and just continue to do that research. And really, I'm jumping in here and answering this question. Mm-hmm. Really just try and find a school that feels like it would challenge you in the right ways, and it feels comfortable. And I know that we're so used to being kind of analytical. We love spreadsheets. We love, column A, column B, and sometimes you just have to go with your gut at the end of the day. Professors?
The only thing that I would say is, think about, definitely you want to challenge yourself, but also you also want to keep in mind that like we've said, the first year of law school is challenging. And so you also want to think about like what kind of environment that you will put yourself in while you're being challenged. One of the things that I will say about Penn State Dickinson Law, I've been here since January 1st, and I found it to be a very welcoming place. Everybody knows my name, and I don't know everybody yet, but it's one of those places where people get to know you, and you can feel welcome, and people go out of their way to help you. So that's what I can say about the experience that I've had here. And because we're wearing masks, people don't know whether or not I'm a faculty member or a student. And this is how I get treated. Like, everybody's kind, everybody's going out of their way to help me. Even before I remind them, hey, I'm the new professor who's in the library. So I would say, think about being challenged, but also think about, a place where you can find a welcome and some comfort while you're being challenged in your first year. Second and third year too, but the first year is usually the one where you're questioning a lot of things about your life, and so you want some things in your life that are good and stable as you're wrestling with first year curriculum and choices in life, and whether or not you're going to sleep now or you're going to go to sleep in 3 hours. So
I would just add that I found myself in a similar position. When I was choosing where to go to law school, I was East Coast, West Coast. I was lucky to have a few options, and I will say that I knew that I wanted to go somewhere that was affordable. That's a real thing. Let's be honest about that. Okay, so I was going to go to a public university that I could afford, and then I looked for the smallest public university I could find, because I knew that I was sort of a non-traditional. So nobody in my family's gone to law school. Again, I was a public school teacher. I didn't really have like a pre-law background, and I needed somewhere that was going to take it easy on me. Let me be honest. I need a little hand holding. And that was a big part of my choice in law school. And I'll tell you, I think, let's be very direct, like the Dickinson law community is small by design. We use the word community like a real word, not just like a description on a flyer. It's a real thing. And if you're somebody who's looking for a light touch law school where you want to go, you want to be left alone for 3 years, let me just read the stuff, let me answer the questions, pass the bar and get out of here, may not be the best place. But if you're looking for a community that is nurturing by design, that's small by design, that's meant to actually sort of make you feel connected and uplifted and sort of, moving forward together, this is a pretty unique place. And so I think one of the things you want to consider in choosing between law schools is your own place in life. Again, if you're a gung-ho getter and you're just ready to go, you might want the place that's going to get out of your way. But if you're looking to grow, again, that personal growth, or you're making a big career transition, whatever it may be, you're going to need a support network, a support structure. It's a very real cultural difference between some schools. A school like ours versus ones that have 5 times the size in terms of student body. So there's a lot of different reasons. Again, value, cost, access to certain markets, but culture is a big one of them. And I don't think that we explain that very well sometimes to prospective law students. There are real cultural differences between schools.
Yeah, I'm actually going to skip ahead now because of something you mentioned. You mentioned that you were the first in your family to go to law school. So we have a question that's about first generation law students and perhaps more broadly first generation college students or grad students in general. The question is, do you have any advice to offer first gen law students? I'm worried that my future classmates who have parents, siblings, or family friends who are lawyers may have the inside scoop.
I'll go ahead and speak first. So I'm first generation college, first generation grad student, first generation only lawyer in my family. And I've seen that thing that you're thinking about where, everybody else seems to know what's going on except for you. I will say that some of that is more of an impression and a feeling as opposed to truth. And even some of those people who come from legacy families where, my daddy was a lawyer and my granddaddy was a lawyer, they don't always know the things. I mean, they don't know as much as they think, and they don't know as much as you think they do. My advice would be like, this is, think of this less as like I'm competing with those people and more of it as I'm doing something for myself and for my family and creating a legacy. That's the thing that I keep, that I had to keep reminding myself that, I went to law school because I was looking for a career. And I met a lot of people who just seemed to know everything. And, I had some insecure moments, but for me, it was still the question, it became the issue of this is for me, these are the choices and the moves that I'm making for myself. And I'm very glad that I've made those choices And I would, if I can impart something to you magically, I would say, to take on that attitude of, this is something that you're doing for yourself. You're competing more for you're building something as more so than competing, because even when you're thinking about like, oh well, they've got this advantage, there's something to be said about being new and scrappy.
Mhm.
And that goes a long way in this profession.
Let me just build on Professor Drake. Let me just be very real and specific about that last statement of being scrappy. The advantage of legacy students is real. Let's be honest. The challenge for first generation students is real, but it's not what you think. The first gen students and the legacy students are equally lost in the classroom. Let me just tell you right now, because your uncle, buddy, aunt who's in big law isn't there to raise a hand in class and answer the question for you. They're not there to take the test for you. Even if they hand you an outline from when they went to law school 20 years ago, that's not going to do anything for you. So the classroom is an equalizer. The reality is that the legacy students have an advantage in terms of networking. Oh, let me introduce you to this potential employer. Oh, let me hook you up with this internship. That's very real. And so what you want to realize is the first year of law school is pretty much the same for everybody. It's a lot of reading, writing, researching, learning how to sort of get that voice, that skill set. That's where you actually have the chance to speed up as a first gen student. Kick butt in the classroom, get out ahead in that equalized space, and then try and leverage your excellent performance, your new skill set, and your demonstrated, excellence to do the networking to try and catch up on that space where you may not have the advantage. And so I will tell you right now, I love writing letters of recommendation for my first gen students. I could say this person came to law school, everybody struggled in the first semester, but they figured it out faster. They came to my office hours more often. They asked the questions to get there. And the best first gen students that I see are the ones who get freaked out first and seek help first, because they actually get the advantage in the classroom versus those who may be overconfident as legacy students who don't take as much time to show up in office hours, go to the tutoring sessions, and seek some help. So let's be real, there's an advantage there, but you can actually sort of overcome it and in some ways skirt it if you're very, very dedicated and really understand the game from day one.
I love those answers. So I am looking at the time and I'm looking at the questions and I'm also looking at the list of questions that I have. And so I'm just gonna say, let's pick up the pace and we're gonna get through another few questions from the list that I have. Then I'll turn it over to Rebecca. We'll do some rapid fire response, question and response. And I think it was definitely appropriate to kind of spend some time on that last question. But let's pick up the pace here. Okay, what skill or advice should pre-law advisors impart to our students before they enter law school? So Professor Badissy, you see them in the first year. Professor Drake, you also see them, I think, in the second semester of the first year. What do you wish that these students already knew?
Well, actually, I'll be seeing them first and second semesters. What I wish that these students already knew, just I would say lots of reading skills. So I would say read as much as you can. Read hard things. Read things that are outside of your comfort zone, because you're going to encounter that in law school, and learn how to think critically about that. The other thing I would say is something that's a little bit more basic, which is like reading comprehension, and with that following instruction. A lot of things about law, the practice of law, are about following the rules. These are the rules. This is how you were supposed to do this. And that practice starts in law school. Actually, that practice starts before law school, but if you don't have it, it starts in law school. And if you need to get into the habit of, reading the rules, understanding what the rules are asking for you, and doing what is being asked of you. And that helps you a lot when it comes to how you perform in class and how you perform in the practice of law.
Yeah, and then Becca, let me just say very quick, for short on time. Number one is talk to people who are still in law school. because a bunch of your professors went to law school decades ago. Their advice is stale. Even if you have family members who went to school, they probably did it a couple years ago. Their advice is stale. Folks who just graduated, they're focused on the bar. They forgot that law school even happened. Okay. Talk to somebody who just finished their first year, maybe they're in the second year, third year, they might be even too far removed. Because the first year is very different than the rest of law school, and law school is very different than the practice of law. So get accurate information from folks who have it fresh. That's the best advice I can give you.
Okay. I've read that the American Bar Association and Dickinson Law, among other law schools I would add, strongly discourage 1Ls from working in their first semester. But I've also heard that it's possible. Between my savings and federal loans, I should be able to cover all of my expenses, but some extra cash would be nice. What are your thoughts?
Let me just be blunt. Don't learn a new job. If you already had a job and you want to keep working at your uncle's restaurant, or you want to keep, sort of doing some support work on the side as a paralegal, that's maybe okay, but you don't have time to learn another skill set on top of that. And two is, if you're going to have a job, it has to be flexible, because you have no idea what's coming. You have no idea how many hours you're going to need, because you're just having a really tough time in a particular class, or a great opportunity opens up to be like an intern and do some research. You need to have some padding in your schedule. So the liability with the work, of course, it's the financial, the ability to bring revenue in the door, but it's also, work is structured, law school life is not. And you're going to need a work structure that allows you that flexibility to succeed in law school. So that's be really careful and be really calculated if you're going to make that choice.
Yeah, and I would also just add, it depends on what your goals for your law school career are, right? Like, are you trying to be in the top 10% of your class? In that case, you might need to spend a little bit more time doing law school. If you just want that degree, maybe you can handle a job. Okay, let's have another question. While my parents are proud of me, they don't understand why I'm going into debt to further my education. How can I explain to them that my legal education is an investment, not a waste of money?
We have a bunch of links we can send you.
Yeah, this is relationships with family can be complicated.
They are. I'll tell you this too. I think you may not be able to explain it. Let's be very honest. I came from an immigrant family. It was a lot of money. I could have gone to the family business, which was doing fine. Why go do this other thing, spend all this money? It's hard to explain. And it's a courage that you have to have sometimes to step out and take a life path that people may not understand. Now, if you're spending somebody else's money, you probably need to explain it to them. But just realize that during your time in law school, and probably for those first few years where you're getting settled, people are not going to understand your experience. Again, even if they went to law school, it was a while ago, they're not going to understand why you went a particular path, took these classes, that internship. Be true to yourself, have your own plan, even if it evolves over time. If you need that validation, you may find it more from your community members here than you may find it from your traditional family structure, because they may just not get it for a few years. It's just the reality. And that's actually why a law school community matters, is they may be more able to support you than your traditional support network during that time. So it may be inexplainable. You just have to be honest about that.
Yeah, and I will say, I grew up poor in the rural South, and my family didn't understand my choices for school. They didn't understand why I went away. They didn't understand why I kept going back to school to get another degree. And you have to, when you're making a choice like this, you have to, decide within yourself why it is that you're making this choice. And if it helps, write it down somewhere, and write it down on a piece of paper and put it on the mirror to remind yourself, because I still don't think my family understands it. I still get comments about like, you just love school, you want to be a professional student. And I let people say what they want. And I live the life that I live, which, makes me happy and is, better than what I would have had without the degree.
Thank you both so much for your very thoughtful responses. At this point, I'm going to turn the program over to my colleague, Bekah Schreiber, Director of Admissions and Financial Aid. And she has been diligently monitoring the Q&A and the chat. and she has a list of questions, and she'll either ping one of us or pose them to any of you, and we'll be able to get through some of those as well to really honor people's questions who are here today.
Yes, and we've got quite a list. So everyone, thank you for submitting these, and we'll get to as many as we can. And of course, if we don't get to all of them, please feel free to email us at dickinsonlaw.psu.edu, and we'll be happy to answer them after the fact. So first, Bekah, we have a question that I think you can answer. Can you explain the difference between Penn State Dickinson Law and Penn State University Park? Are these two different schools that require two different applications?
Yeah, so there are two great options for legal education at Penn State. Penn State has two separately accredited law schools. So you have Penn State Dickinson Law, which is the oldest law school in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We were founded over 180 years ago, back in 1834 in Carlisle, which is where we continue to operate today. And then there's also Penn State Law in University Park, which is in fact a totally different, separately accredited law school, which, you know, I would recommend, just like you would research the differences between Dickinson Law and Temple, or Dickinson Law and Drexel. You would similarly need to research the differences between Dickinson Law and Penn State Law and University Park. We're both equally part of the Penn State family. We both benefit from being part of the larger university, that name brand cachet, access to the largest active dues paying alumni network in the world. So I think that's really probably all I have time for today. I'd be happy to have a conversation about what makes Dickinson Law unique. We have a lot of resources on our website. And again, it's really just about doing that research into the differences between law schools. But again, the cool thing about Penn State is that we do have two great options for legal education. And a kind of an easy way to think about it, I mean, there are some other law schools in the US that have either an additional law school, Indiana, for instance, or multiple law schools like the University of California system. And so much like those systems, you do need to apply separately to each school.
Great, thank you. Professor Badissy, what experiential learning opportunities are offered to 1L students?
Well, lots of them are offered. Make sure you don't take most of them. That's what I'm going to tell you right now. So in terms of experiential learning, we have everything from direct advocacy opportunities. You can volunteer for community outreach. There are opportunities to shadow folks, whether it's in the courtroom or in other scenarios. You have club opportunities, everything from Analog Club, the Black Law Student Association, all of them organize events. But in terms of structured experiential opportunities that are part of the curriculum, they're not there, and that's by design. Because again, in that first year, there's a lot to learn already on top of trying to put experiential stuff on top. I will tell you, I do a lot of work myself. I do a lot of research. One of the reasons I love being part of Penn State is we have this massive research budget, and I've got students researching everything from local solar ordinances in Pennsylvania to energy contracts in Vietnam right now. I don't even talk to a student about research opportunities until after finals of the first year, because I would be sort of violating a trust there if I try to ask them to think about something else when I'm telling them in my class, focus on this thing. And so there are a lot of opportunities. The timing of them is what I would be careful about. Some folks, if you sort of ace that first semester and you're ready to go, maybe you start doing something in the second semester that's experiential. But if you're not acing it and you're not quite where you want to be, don't worry about the externship. I've seen these questions in the chat just yet. Get the first year done right. Get those grades on your transcript, and then shop it around anywhere that you want to work. Shop it around anywhere you want to do an externship, internship, whatever it may be. So the opportunities are there. I will just put them in three categories very quickly. There's a lot of research that you do with professors. There's a lot of direct experiential opportunities, like go work at a firm or a DA's office. And then there's a lot of policy opportunities. We have a lot of law students who advocate for something. Maybe they're submitting comments to the state legislature. Maybe they're out there organizing the community. So it could be professional, it could be research, it could be sort of organizing. They're all there. Just make sure you do it at the right time.
Great, thank you. This one's for Professor Drake. And this attendee says, I have a few ideas for law review articles. How do we go about getting a potential article reviewed and published?
So one of the things that, so sorry, I'm stumbling over this. So you would, part of what you would do would be to research the different law reviews and figure out what their requirements are in terms of publication. Another thing that you would want to do is a little bit of background research to make sure that the item that you are writing about hasn't been written about by someone else. So you would want to start there just to make sure that your topic is new and fresh and not a repetition of what someone else has done. And then once you've gotten that together, you would essentially shop it around to the law review. Unless, I mean, so this of course is assuming that you are not on law review. If you are on law review, then you have a requirement of publishing something. And so then it would be you working within the requirements of the journal for which you're working.
Great, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
All right, this question is for either of our professor panelists. If a graduate pursues an area of law for a few years after graduation, for example, big law is what was in the question, and then they want to change focus to something else, how do you suggest they go about exploring other options? And will the Career Services Office still be able to assist them as alums?
I could do that quick if you want, and Professor Drake, if you want to add something. I'll tell you, that was me. I went to big law for a couple of years. It was great, but it was too much work. I didn't have any, I mean, the money was nice, but I just wasn't feeling it. And I decided to move into government. My heart was in politics. I'll tell you, yes, you can make the switch. Yes, your Career Service Office can help you, but that's actually not the real key. The key is the other students you met in law school. The key is your network. The key is that after that first year, again, get the first year done, hustle, do the hustle, the dance and the real life thing, which is to say that get out there and meet folks, your community here, volunteer for ABA communities, go to student conferences, students get free admission to all kinds of conferences, get out there and get to know folks. Because I actually went one direction in my career. I went sort of this corporate direction, stayed in touch with all the people that I loved in the policy space. Lo and behold, when I decided I didn't like the corporate space, who do I call up? Somebody that I met in law school, a group of folks. They introduced me. I literally was introduced by a friend to the office in the government where I ended up working because they didn't have a job listed. You just knew that they were hiring, right? And so the best thing you can do is to grow a network. And I'll tell you right now, part of that is respect. You remember the folks in law school that you liked, that were respectful and that were, sort of good members of the community. And you think you want to come in all brash and arguing and like the loudest person in the classroom. That's not the first person you pick up the phone for. And so see law school as a network building opportunity, and that network is what allows you to be flexible. I changed jobs 3 times in my career. The network is key to that, and that's part of what you do after the first year. It's part of what you build in law school.
The other thing that I will add to that is also keep an eye on your bar association, because there are courses in different areas of practice of law that your bar association will sponsor. And so, yeah, that's an opportunity for you to go and learn about this new area of law, but it's also an opportunity for you to network and meet people who are working in that area. And so you go to learn, you also go to network, and just kind of go from there.
Great advice. Thank you both. All right, Bekah, I have a question for you. One attendee has noted that a recent LSAC survey of some law schools suggests that about half of the schools who responded to the survey have what's called overcommitted their classes for this fall. And so the question is, if Dickinson Law is over deposited, and if so, what resources will be allocated to ensure that incoming 1Ls receive the same high quality education and community feeling and employment outcomes that Dickinson Law is known for?
Yeah, so this question is very similar, in fact, to an email that I received earlier today, which is on my to-do list to respond to. I've had a pretty tight schedule this morning. So the short answer is no. We are perfectly situated. We are, in fact, exactly on the money in terms of where we need to be. We are committed to all of our students. So wait, the second part was about resources. Intentionally small class sizes allow our faculty and our administrators to be incredibly responsive to students. So you'll be able to meet with career services. We just hired someone else in the career services office this past year. We're actively hiring more faculty just because we're growing the school, and we've got the resources to do that. So, you know, absolutely, employment outcomes, I believe, was mentioned in the question. The small community, we remain committed to that, and indeed, it has been a really interesting year for a variety of reasons. And I believe the question here refers to recent comments by the administration. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but if it was references to inquiring if anyone needs to defer, it's also, we've received many requests for deferrals both this year and last year because the pandemic has really created challenging situations for people. It's posed health challenges for people and their families. Some folks aren't comfortable returning in person. Some folks aren't able to get vaccinated for various reasons. Some people had to use the money that they'd been saving for law school on medical treatment. So it's really been a challenging year, and I would caution not to misconstrue what was otherwise a pretty innocuous, gentle offer.
Great, thank you for that answer. And just to follow up in a similar vein, how often do people get accepted from the wait list in a typical year? Is there a typical year?
I like the phrase a typical year because there's no such thing anymore. And maybe there never was, I don't know. But it really varies in terms of the number and the timing. Sometimes, you know, it can be as early as May, and sometimes it can be as late as the first day of orientation if someone doesn't show up and we have a spot to fill. So there's a wide range. We do encourage our students on the wait list to go ahead and make other plans and keep us informed if there have been any changes. Maybe they took an LSAT again, maybe they received a promotion at work or an academic award at graduation. So those are the kinds of updates that we'd like to hear, and just continue to be patient with us. You're looking at 2/3 of our admissions team right here, and I'm not even including the professors on this call. So we are trying to you know, review all of the files that we receive, respond to all of the emails in a timely fashion that we receive. And we love connecting with prospective and admitted students, but we just ask for your continued grace and kindness as we attempt to do that this summer.
We do ask for that. Thank you all. So next question, I will actually answer it. It has to do with the FAFSA. Do you have to fill it out every year of law school? Yes, you do. If you want to borrow federal student loans each year, the FAFSA is what gives you access to those loans. Also, if you want to apply for a need-based aid grant, you will need to submit a FAFSA every year. If neither one of those situations applies to you, then no, you do not have to submit a FAFSA every year in that case. So the next question, Professor Badissy, I think you can answer this one. Speaking of the War College, I think we referred to it earlier. Does the school have any connections with the War College that benefit the students?
Oh, sure. And not just the War College. I mean, directly with the War College, we actually, our faculty work together a lot. We run joint exercises. Professor Gadian, who's not on the call right now, runs this amazing joint cybersecurity exercise every year where the War College students and law students come together and go through a simulation, like an actual, sort of tabletop exercise. Some classes are co-taught occasionally. It's worth noting that we also sometimes collaborate with faculty from Dickinson College. We sometimes collaborate with folks at the state capitol. I have my students actually go and actually submit comments on pending legislation sometimes in Harrisburg. And so there's a wide range of collaboration across various institutions, the War College in particular, I think, because they're so unique in their skill set. A lot of those are really interesting and I'd say great growth opportunities. And it's worth noting we actually do a lot of collaboration with the medical school too. We have a joint medical clinic where doctors and lawyers work together on health access issues. So quite a bit of collaboration, not just with the War College.
Thank you. All right, I will answer this question that has come in. I paid both of my deposits through the portal, but my account in LionPath does not reflect the payment yet. When will that show up? So your seat deposits are refundable when you show up for the fall, essentially. So we actually refund those once school starts. So you won't see them in your Bursar screen in LionPath for several more months. And if you have more specific questions about that, you can feel free to email me. I will put my email in the chat. So this one is for anyone on this panel. Is there anywhere good to eat for cheap in Carlisle?
Well, I'm just going to jump in and say that my favorite place in Carlisle is the Grazery. And then Issei Noodle would be number 2. I eat there for lunch, so it's usually fairly affordable, although, you know, it's certainly more expensive than if I were to make my own sandwich, but I don't think my sandwiches are as good as Maria's.
I'll say ditto on Issei. Issei is really good. Honestly, I've just tried each of the, well, not each of the, I've tried a lot of the different restaurants, maybe once, but again, I moved here beginning of January, so I'm still working my way through all of the restaurants there, but I haven't really had anything that I don't enjoy.
I think it's clear that you're talking to other individuals in this panel who have a much healthier diet than I do. Carlisle has a lot of great options. It's a college town, right? So there's a lot of cheap pizza, burgers. There's like 7 ice cream places. It makes no sense at all. They're all within walking distance of our house, which my kids have figured out. And I will say this, we benefit from being in the middle of one of the most productive agriculture areas because you can get fresh everything. We literally pick up our groceries from a farm every Friday. And so there's really great high-end restaurants that serve that. There's also like $1 slice of pizza, if that's what you're looking for. And so it's all there, and it's obscenely affordable. I sometimes get angry at how much things cost here, knowing that I spent the last 10 years living in DC and paying 4 times the price for something. So I think one of the nice things about our community is not only is it available, but it's accessible in a lot of ways. And I think that's a big part of maybe even sometimes the value decision that you're making.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more. So either professor, please feel free to jump in here. What kind of emphasis does Dickinson Law put into legal writing? And what advice do you have for students who want to perfect their writing? Is there anything they can do either before they come to law school or during their first year to perfect their legal writing?
I think we were both waiting for the other to click on it.
I was going to defer to your leading role in writing skill development.
The thing that I will say in terms of so legal writing is important, and it's you'll be taking it both semesters of your first year, and it sets the foundation for your writing skills for the rest of law school. So nobody's like putting the pressure on you, like, you know, if you don't get this and you'll never be able to write, but it's more of, you know, providing opportunity for you to, you know, understand what is expected of legal writing and opportunity to enhance and develop the writing skill that you have. In terms of preparing for it, I would say learn about the way that law school exams are written, because that also kind of becomes the framework for how you're writing in your first year. So you'll hear phrases thrown around like IRAC or CIRAC, which is like the acronym for how to structure your answer in law school. Those are important things to understand. And, you know, if you have an opportunity, start working on that right now. The other thing is get comfortable with citation. And so, you know, what you want to do is be in the habit of giving credit, you know, giving us an inline citation, a footnote, endnote, for anything that you are citing that are, you know, any words that you're writing that are not your own words. You want to be in the habit of that because that's important for what it is that we do in the practice of the law. It also, it's also a matter of reputation. If you are giving proper sites, people know, it's kind of an indication of, here's somebody who is acknowledging that the information that they're providing comes from someone else. And for me, I mean, maybe I'm biased because, I end up doing a lot with citation. For me, it's like, oh, somebody who's honest because they're giving credit to whoever it comes from, providing a citation. So those are a couple of ways to work on, prepare for writing in law school.
I'm looking at the time, and I think I need to cut us off now. That was really fun. I feel like we had probably enough content to go for another hour, but I would like to be respectful of everyone's calendars. And let's give a big virtual round of applause to Professors Badissy and Drake. And thank you to all of our registrants for attending today's program. If you have any lingering questions or simply want to connect, feel free to email us at dickinsonlaw.psu.edu. We will make sure your email goes to the right person who can handle the question that you ask. And we do very much look forward to staying in touch.